holidays. We're here to do a quick sort. And this is Maddy. Say hi, Maddy.
Hi, Maddy.
And this is Darin.
Hello.
And I'm Kendra, and this is our quick sort.
So, for quick sort, we have 9 objects here, and we're going to eventually sort them all. So, at first, we take the middle number and we put it in a temporary space. We take the number at the end of our array and put it in that spot, and then take this back, put it at the beginning, and label it our pivot. We then take 2 more pointers. We have a small index that we put on the pivot, and then we have our index. At first, we check to see if the index is smaller than the pivot, and 5 is less than 7, so we move our small pivot over 1. Our small index over 1, thank you. And we would swap them, so we would take the number, put it in the temp, swap the small index and index. Since there's nothing there, nothing swaps, and then take the temp and put it in the small index. And then we would move the index over. We already had this organized, apparently. So then we would check to see if 3 is less than 7. It is, so we'd move the small index. We would do the swaps again, but to save time we won't. And then we would move the index over. And the next one is 4, which is the same. We accidentally had this one already sorted, I guess. We would do the swap to temp and then back out, move the index. 1 is also smaller than 7, so we would move them again. Do the swap to temp, swap it back, and move the index. 23 is not smaller, so we would only move the index. We would keep moving it until we find something else that is smaller, and nothing is. Then finally, we take the pivot and move it to temp. Take the small index and move it to the pivot location. And then take the temp and put it at the small index. And now we know that that one is sorted, so if Kendra could put the markers there. We now know that 7 is in the right spot. So then we will start with this side. We will select a new pivot. It'd actually be 5. We move it down to temp. Swap this one over. Take it back out of temp and put it at the beginning of the array. Give it the pivot label and move our indexes back to the starting positions. We know that 1 is less than 5, so we move the small index, take the index, put it to temp, swap the 2, and put it back in small index, and move it over. We ended up doing the best situation possible and doing it again, having it awkwardly sorted. So 3 is also less than 5, so we'd move the small index, swap them into temp and back out, and then move the index. 4 is also less than 5, so we'd move the small index, swap, and since the index is at the end of our list, we know that we are done. So then we would move the pivot into temp. Take the small index and move it to the pivot location. And then take temp and put it back at small index. And now we know that the 5 is sorted. So, I guess we'll continue with this one because I see that we have the same mistake a third time in a row. And, yeah, we will... Actually, we might not because we have to move the pivot. So we will select the middle value, put it in temp, move the farthest left value in the array to that location, take temp, put it at the end, and make it our pivot. And then we will do our small index and index. 4 is not less than 1, so we would move our index over. 3 is also not less than 1, and since our index is at the end of the array, we know that 1 is in the correct spot. Professional.
Yes. Yes, yes.
So now we have 4 and 3 still unsorted. So we would take 4, move it to the farthest position in that array, which is where it's at right now. And we will move the pivot and the index to it. 3 is less than 4. So you'd move the small index, swap, and then move the large index, but the index is already at the end. So now you take the pivot, we can get the pivot out, move it to temp, take the small index and move it to the pivot location. Take the temp and put it at small index. And now we know that both of these are sorted because the 3 is the only one in this non-segmented part of the array. I can get the small index back out. There we go. And now we move over to the side. We take 137, put it in temp, move this to that location, take it and put it at the first position of this array and give it the pivot label. We place our index and small index, and check is 23 less than 137. Yes, it is, so we move the small index, take the index, put it in temp, swap the 2, again there's nothing to swap, and then we put it in the small index, and we move the index over. Is 1,342 less than 137? No, it is not, so you would just move the index over. Is 27 less than 137? It is. So you would move the small index over 1. You would take the index, and now I can actually demonstrate it with the swap, and put it in the temp. You take the small index and move it to the index location, and you take the temp and put it at the small index. And since index is at the end of the list, we know we're done sorting. So you will take the pivot and put it in temp, take the small index and move it to pivot, and take the temp and move it to small index. And now we know that 137 is sorted. we also know that 1342 is also sorted because it is the only one left in that order. So we only have 2 more to sort. We would take the middle, round it down, put it in the pivot location, which is where it just already happens to be, and put our indexes. Is 23 less than 27? Yes, it is. So you'd move the small index, take the index, put it in temp, swap the 2, which don't exist again, and then put it back in the small index. And then since the index is at the end of the array, you're done. And you would take the pivot, put it in temp, take the small index, and move it to the pivot, and take the temp, and put it to the small index. And now we know our entire list is sorted. And that is the quick sort.